Airport staff kicked Black CEO out moments later, his private jet stunned the runway. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, it's free, and it helps us keep bringing you powerful stories like this one. Your support truly means everything. Let's grow this channel together. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now, let's get back to the story. Get out. Now. The command slammed across the VIP terminal lounge, sharp enough to silence even the espresso machines. Every conversation stopped mid-sentence. A roller bag tipped onto its side. Heads turned in synchronized curiosity. Outside the floor-to-ceiling glass, a sleek white Gulfstream sat on the tarmac beneath a gray morning sky. Its tail number gleamed against the runway lights. Ground crew moved with quiet precision around it. Inside, chaos had just found a target. The woman pointing was the terminal operations manager, mid-40s, navy blazer tailored to authority, badge polished to a shine. Her finger hovered inches from his face. "You can't just walk in here like you own the place," she snapped. "This lounge is for private aviation passengers only." The man she was addressing didn't stand. He sat comfortably in a caramel leather chair, one ankle resting across his knee. A gold medal hung from a royal blue ribbon around his neck, catching the sterile airport lighting. His cobalt athletic shirt fit clean and deliberate, expensive without trying to look it. He looked up at her. Calm. Measured. Unmoved. Across the lounge, a young gate agent froze with his phone half raised. A businessman in a charcoal suit leaned toward his wife and whispered, "Is this for real?" Someone else quietly started recording. The manager stepped closer. "Sir, this is your final warning. If you don't leave voluntarily, security will escort you out." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the room, laughter that wasn't funny, just relieved it wasn't directed at them. The man adjusted the ribbon of his medal with slow precision. "I'm right where I'm supposed to be," he said evenly. The manager let out a tight laugh. "Private jet passengers board through executive services. And something tells me that's not your situation." That landed. A couple of guests exchanged glances. Someone muttered, "Wow." The air shifted, not dramatically, but enough to be felt. The hum of the ventilation system seemed louder. The faint clink of porcelain against marble echoed too clearly. It wasn't anger in his eyes. It wasn't embarrassment. It was assessment. Behind the manager, the young gate agent's phone buzzed. He glanced down, frowned at the screen, then looked up at the man again, this time differently. The manager reached for her radio. "Security, we've got someone refusing to leave the VIP lounge," she said crisply. The word "someone" lingered. Two uniformed security officers appeared at the entrance within seconds, hands clasped professionally in front of them. "Sir," one of them began carefully, "we're going to need you to step outside with us." The man uncrossed his legs and rose to his feet. He wasn't imposing. He didn't need to be. Through the glass wall behind him, the Gulfstream's engines began to spool up, a low mechanical growl building across the runway. A ground vehicle abruptly redirected traffic cones. The control tower lights flickered as radio chatter intensified. Inside the lounge, several heads turned toward the sound. The manager didn't. "Let's not make this more difficult than it needs to be," she said, folding her arms. He slipped his phone from his pocket. The screen glowed briefly. One new message. "Ready for priority clearance." He gave the slightest nod. Then he looked back at her, voice quiet enough to force everyone to lean in. "You might want to check who just requested priority clearance." Her radio crackled. She glanced down instinctively. And for the first time since she'd shouted, her expression changed. The radio crackled again. The manager glanced down at it, irritation flashing across her face before she masked it with composure. "Escort him out," she repeated, sharper this time. "Now." The two security officers shifted slightly, not aggressive, just procedural. The older of the two gave Marcus a polite nod. "Sir, we don't want to make this uncomfortable. If you'll just step outside with us, we can sort it out." Marcus didn't resist. He didn't argue. He didn't raise his voice. He simply studied the manager for a long second, as if committing her expression to memory. "Before we do that," he said calmly, "can I ask what policy I violated?" The question hung there, measured, precise. The manager folded her arms. "This lounge is reserved for confirmed private aviation clients." "I am a confirmed private aviation client." Her jaw tightened. "Then show me your boarding authorization through executive services." Marcus reached into his pocket and produced a slim black card holder. From it, he pulled a matte finished pass, minimalist, embossed, unbranded. Not flashy. Just quiet authority. She barely looked at it. "This doesn't match our standard format," she said quickly. "Our executive clients check in through a separate manifest system." Behind her, the young gate agent glanced at his tablet again. His brow furrowed deeper. "Ma'am," he started hesitantly. She shot him a look that shut him down instantly. Marcus watched that exchange carefully. "So you're denying access," he said, voice even, "based on formatting." "I'm denying access," she replied, leaning slightly closer, "based on verification." There it was. Verification. A word that sounded neutral but carried weight. A businessman near the espresso bar cleared his throat. "He's got a medal," he muttered under his breath. "Doesn't look like a gate crasher." The manager ignored him. "Sir," she said crisply, "private aviation clients are typically accompanied by staff. Luggage. Ground coordination. Not," she gestured vaguely at his athletic shirt, "this." The implication was obvious. "Not dressed like that. Not alone. Not you." Marcus didn't react outwardly. Inside, though, a familiar recognition settled in. He had been 22 when a venture firm once told him, "You don't present like a founder." He had been 30 when a banker asked who the real decision-maker was. And now 45, owner of fleets and flight paths, he was being evaluated by wardrobe. "I flew in alone," he said simply. "I prefer efficiency." The younger security officer shifted uncomfortably. He glanced through the glass at the Gulf Stream again. Something about the tail number seemed to register. The gate agent's tablet chimed. This time louder. He swallowed. "Ma'am," he tried again, quieter but firmer, "there's a Grant Aviation entry that just updated on the executive manifest." The manager's expression hardened. "That's irrelevant," she snapped. "We're dealing with the individual in front of us." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Yes," he said. "You are." Outside, the Gulf Stream's engines deepened in pitch as ground crew cleared the final approach path. Inside, the lounge no longer felt amused. It felt uncertain. The younger security officer glanced again at the tablet in the gate agent's trembling hands. "Grant Aviation," the agent repeated quietly. "Priority status just updated. Executive handling required." The manager didn't turn around. "We are not discussing a company," she said sharply. "We are addressing a compliance issue." Marcus watched her carefully. She wasn't confused. She was committed. "There is no compliance issue," he replied, voice steady. "Only an assumption." The older security officer shifted his stance. "Sir, with respect, if there's a manifest discrepancy, we can sort that out in executive services." "There isn't a discrepancy," the gate agent said, louder this time. His eyes moved between the manager and Marcus. The entry shows a direct terminal clearance authorization. It just synced. The room absorbed that information slowly. A woman near the bar lowered her phone. A man in a tailored navy suit straightened his posture. The manager finally turned. "Let me see that." She stepped toward the agent, snatched the tablet from his hands, and scanned the screen. Her jaw tightened. "What is this?" she demanded. The agent swallowed. "It's a terminal override linked to Grant Aviation Holdings. It lists a direct access privilege." Marcus adjusted his cuffs calmly. "And who," the manager said slowly, eyes narrowing at the screen, "is the listed principal?" The agent hesitated. Then he answered. "Marcus E. Grant." The name landed harder than the engine noise outside. Several heads turned toward him again, this time not curious. "Assessing." The manager looked up from the tablet, her composure thinning at the edges. "That doesn't prove anything," she said quickly. "Anyone can name drop a company." Marcus gave the faintest smile. "That's true," he said. "But not everyone can authorize one." Her radio crackled again. This time, the voice on the other end sounded different, more urgent, less routine. "Terminal Ops, confirm visual on Mr. Grant. Control tower requesting acknowledgement." The manager's grip on the tablet tightened. "This is Terminal Ops," she replied, her voice controlled but thinner than before. "State your confirmation." "Priority landing clearance has been granted under Grant Aviation Holdings. We have a request for direct tarmac reception. Confirm Mr. Marcus Elijah Grant is on site." Silence. Not the awkward kind. The heavy kind. Outside the glass wall, the Gulf Stream began taxiing forward, its nose aligning toward the terminal access route. A follow vehicle moved into position beside it. Inside the lounge, the younger security officer slowly removed his hand from his belt. The older one took half a step back. The manager stared at Marcus. "You arranged this," she said. Marcus met her gaze evenly. "No," he replied. "I scheduled it." Behind them, phones were no longer recording out of amusement. They were recording history shifting in real time. The manager lowered the radio slowly. "Why didn't you say who you were?" she demanded, a crack forming beneath her authority. Marcus's expression didn't change. "You didn't ask," he said quietly. Outside, the jet rolled closer. Inside, the room no longer questioned whether he belonged. It questioned who had just miscalculated. The Gulf Stream's wheels rolled into full view beyond the glass, sunlight flashing along its fuselage as it aligned with the private terminal access lane. Inside, no one spoke. Even the espresso machine had gone quiet. The manager stood frozen for half a second, too long enough for everyone to see it. Her radio crackled again. "Terminal Ops, we need confirmation. Tarmac reception team is in position. Is Mr. Grant prepared for direct transfer?" "Direct transfer. Not passenger. Not guest. Mr. Grant." The younger security officer exhaled slowly, stepping back entirely now. The older one straightened his jacket, posture shifting from enforcement to protocol. The manager pressed the radio to her mouth. "Stand by." Her voice had lost its edge. Marcus glanced at his phone once more. A second message blinked onto the screen. "Board awaiting confirmation. Contract execution window, 12 minutes. He locked the screen and slid it back into his pocket. "You mentioned verification," he said calmly. "This would be the part where you verify." The manager's eyes flicked toward the jet outside. The tail number matched the tablet entry. The flight clearance code matched the override. Everything was aligning in a way she hadn't anticipated. "This doesn't explain why you're sitting in this lounge unannounced," she said, clinging to structure. Marcus regarded her evenly. "I arrived early," he replied. "I like to observe operations before investing further." The word investing traveled through the room like a spark. A man near the window whispered, "Investing in what?" The gate agent answered before he could stop himself. "The terminal expansion." Several heads snapped toward Marcus again. The airport had been negotiating a multi-million-dollar private aviation expansion for months. Rumors of a new executive partner had circulated quietly, but no one knew who was behind it. Until now. The manager's composure thinned visibly. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that you're the principal stakeholder in the expansion deal?" Marcus didn't nod. He didn't boast. He simply said, "Among other things." Outside, the jet came to a controlled stop along the designated private access corridor. A black SUV rolled into position beside it. Ground crew stood at attention. The radio spoke again. "Terminal ops, tarmac reception is ready. We are awaiting Mr. Grant." The manager lowered the device completely this time. The lounge was no longer uncomfortable. It was aware. The same businessman who had whispered earlier now stepped slightly aside, giving Marcus a clear path toward the glass doors. A woman who had recorded the confrontation discreetly lowered her phone. The shift wasn't loud. It was subtle. Respect replacing assumption. The manager cleared her throat. "Mr. Grant," she began, forcing professionalism back into her tone, "if there's been a misunderstanding." "There hasn't," Marcus interrupted gently. He stepped forward, closing the small distance between them. "You evaluated access based on presentation," he continued. "That's not policy. That's preference." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. He wasn't finished. "I don't remove people from rooms because they look unfamiliar," he added. "Especially when they fund the building." That landed harder than the first command she'd shouted. Outside, the jet door lowered. Inside, the power dynamic had fully reversed. And everyone in that lounge knew it. No one moved. The jet door outside lowered with hydraulic precision, sunlight catching the polished edge as a uniformed flight attendant stepped into position at the top of the stairs. Inside the lounge, every assumption in the room had quietly collapsed. Marcus remained where he stood, calm, centered, while the manager recalibrated in real time. "You're saying," she began carefully, "that you're the majority stakeholder in the private aviation expansion." Marcus slid his hands into his pockets. "I'm saying," he replied evenly, "that I signed the funding authorization." A low murmur moved through the lounge. The airport's expansion project had been headline speculation for weeks. New hangars. Exclusive access corridors. Executive investment restructuring. It was rumored to be the largest private aviation upgrade the city had ever seen. And the identity of the lead investor had been sealed behind NDAs and holding companies. Until now. The gate agent swallowed hard. "Grant Aviation Holdings," he said quietly. "That's the acquisition vehicle." Marcus didn't correct him. Because it was. 20 years earlier, he had started with one charter lease and a handshake agreement. One aircraft. One pilot. One runway no one else wanted. Now Grant Aviation managed fleets across 3 continents. But he never introduced himself with numbers. He preferred observation. The manager straightened her blazer, forcing structure back into her posture. "If we were not informed of your arrival," she said, "that would be a coordination oversight." "No," Marcus answered softly. "It wouldn't." The word landed with surgical calm. "I intentionally arrived without executive escort," he continued. "No advance call. No announcement. I wanted to see how your team handles unrecognized high-value clients." The phrase "unrecognized high-value clients" settled into the room like truth. The younger security officer looked down. The businessman near the window looked away. The manager's face tightened. "You set this up," she said, realization replacing denial. Marcus tilted his head slightly. I created an opportunity, he replied. Your team made a decision. Outside, the SUV door opened. Two members of the tarmac reception unit stood waiting beside it, eyes fixed on the terminal entrance. His phone buzzed again. Board ready. Media embargo in place. Awaiting your signal. He silenced it. There's a board vote scheduled in 8 minutes, Marcus said calmly. Final approval for the terminal expansion. The manager's breath caught almost imperceptibly. And, she asked. And investor confidence, he replied, depends heavily on operational culture. Silence. Not hostile. Measured. I wasn't evaluating leather seating or lighting, he added. I was evaluating leadership under pressure. Her authority had evaporated without a single raised voice. Outside, the jet's auxiliary engines hummed steadily, patient. Inside, the lounge had transformed from spectacle to audit. Marcus glanced once more through the glass. Then back at her. Tell me, he asked quietly, would you have treated me differently if I'd walked in wearing a tailored suit? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because everyone in the room already knew. The question lingered. Would she have treated him differently in a tailored suit? The manager's silence answered louder than any apology could have. Outside, the SUV engine idled beside the jet. The flight attendant remained poised at the top of the stairs, eyes fixed on the terminal doors. They were waiting for him. Inside, the power shift was complete. Marcus stepped past the manager, not brushing her, not rushing her, just moving with deliberate control toward the glass exit doors that led to the private tarmac corridor. The security officers instinctively moved aside. Mr. Grant, the older one said quietly, voice no longer procedural but respectful. Would you like us to clear the path? Marcus shook his head. No, he replied. The path is already clear. He pushed open the secured access door. It clicked softly as it unlocked from the inside, authorization granted through the executive override that had just appeared in the system minutes earlier. Behind him, the lounge remained frozen in suspended awareness. The manager found her voice again. Mr. Grant, she called out, carefully now, we value all of our clients. He paused just long enough to respond without turning around. Value, he said evenly, is demonstrated. Not declared. Then he stepped through the door. Cold air met him immediately as he entered the restricted corridor leading toward the tarmac. The sound of the jet's engines deepened, steady and controlled. Inside the lounge, the gate agent's tablet chimed once more. He glanced down and his face drained of color. Ma'am, he said slowly. The manager turned toward him. There's an internal alert. She stepped closer, taking the tablet with controlled hands. Across the top of the screen was a single line of text. Grant Aviation Holdings, conditional review triggered. Her breath stalled. Below it, operational conduct audit initiated. Leadership evaluation under board discretion. She looked toward the glass corridor where Marcus was now walking, measured and unhurried, toward the waiting SUV. This was a test, the gate agent whispered. Outside, the SUV door opened as Marcus approached. One of the reception officers gave a respectful nod. Good morning, Mr. Grant. Morning, he replied simply. Inside the lounge, the manager's radio crackled again. Terminal ops, the tower voice said, firm and unmistakable. Board liaison is requesting your presence immediately. The word immediately echoed. She lowered the radio slowly. Around her, the same guests who had watched the confrontation unfold now avoided her gaze. The businessman near the window cleared his throat and quietly exited. The woman who had been recording slipped her phone into her purse. No one laughed now. On the tarmac, Marcus paused before entering the SUV. He looked back once, not at the manager, not at the crowd, but at the building itself. Glass. Steel. Concrete. Infrastructure built on perception. Then he stepped into the vehicle. The door shut softly. And as the SUV began moving toward the waiting jet, the true cost of a single assumption began to calculate itself. Inside the SUV, the world went quiet. The engine purred as the vehicle rolled across the restricted access lane toward the waiting Gulf Stream. The runway lights reflected faintly against the tinted windows, streaks of white and amber cutting through gray morning air. Marcus sat back, composed. Across from him, his chief operations officer, Daniel Reyes, closed a tablet and studied him carefully. "Well?" Daniel asked. Marcus glanced once toward the terminal building behind them. "They showed me exactly what I needed to see." Inside the VIP lounge, the manager was no longer in control of anything. She stood in the center of the room as if gravity had shifted. Her radio buzzed again, this time not from the tower. "Board liaison on secure line," came the voice. "You're expected in conference room B immediately." Her throat tightened. "Is this about the expansion review?" she asked. "It's about your decision-making," the voice replied. Then the line went dead. The younger gate agent stepped back slowly, distancing himself from proximity to authority that was dissolving in real time. "Ma'am," he said cautiously, "the internal audit flag, it's tagged level 1. Level 1. That wasn't procedural correction. That was executive exposure." Outside, the SUV came to a smooth stop at the base of the jet stairs. The flight attendant descended 2 steps, posture flawless. "Welcome aboard, Mr. Grant." He stepped out, straightened his cuffs, and looked up at the aircraft that carried his name through shell corporations and silent contracts. Grant Aviation didn't just charter planes. It financed terminals. It funded infrastructure. It reshaped regional aviation networks. And in 8 minutes, it would decide whether this airport remained part of that future. Inside the lounge, whispers had turned into silence. The manager picked up the tablet again, scanning the fine print beneath the audit notification. "Operational conduct review initiated due to potential reputational risk exposure." Her reflection stared back at her in the black glass screen. Reputational risk. She thought back to the moment she had pointed her finger inches from his face. "Get out. Now." The words replayed in her mind with new weight. On the tarmac, Marcus paused halfway up the jet stairs and turned slightly toward Daniel, who had followed behind him. "Is the board ready?" he asked. "Unanimous on your recommendation," Daniel replied. "They're waiting for your final directive." Marcus nodded once. Through the glass wall of the terminal, he could see faint silhouettes inside the lounge still watching. Observing. Processing. He pulled out his phone and opened the secure board channel. "Terminal expansion vote, pending confirmation." He typed a single line. "Proceed to conditional suspension." Then he pressed send. Inside conference room B, across the building, several executives felt their devices vibrate simultaneously. The manager's radio crackled again. "Terminal ops," came the voice from upstairs, clipped and formal. "Expansion funding has been placed under conditional suspension pending leadership review." The air left her lungs. On the jet stairs, Marcus slipped his phone back into his pocket. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply stepped inside the aircraft. Behind him, the door began to close. And inside the terminal, the cost of one assumption had just multiplied into millions. The jet door sealed with a muted hydraulic thud. Inside the cabin, everything was controlled: cream leather seats, polished walnut paneling, soft recessed lighting. The world outside could fracture. In here, decisions were clean. Marcus took his seat without ceremony. Daniel remained standing for a moment. "Conditional suspension will hit public channels within 15 minutes, he said. "Markets will notice." "They should," Marcus replied. Outside the terminal, Executives were already moving too fast. Conference room B had filled in under 3 minutes. Legal. Operations. Public relations. The terminal manager entered last. No one offered her a seat. On the wall-mounted display, the expansion dashboard glowed in corporate blue. Grant Aviation Holdings, strategic partner. Status, suspended pending conduct review. The chief financial officer cleared his throat. We need clarity, he said carefully. What exactly triggered this? A legal advisor tapped her screen. Field conduct incident involving executive stakeholder, she said. Recorded by multiple guests. The word recorded tightened the room further. Back in the VIP lounge, video had already begun circulating. Not viral yet, but internal. The clip was short. A finger pointed. Get out. Now. A calm man seated. The CFO exhaled slowly. This is reputational exposure at the investor level. The board liaison turned toward the manager. Did you verify identity before issuing removal? She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I followed access protocol, she said. Did you verify identity? The liaison repeated. Silence. On the jet, Marcus watched the terminal through the oval window as the engines began their steady rise in pitch. Daniel took the seat across from him. They'll request reconsideration, Daniel said. They can't afford to lose this deal. Marcus's gaze remained fixed on the building. This wasn't about affordability, he replied. Inside conference room B, the liaison folded his hands. Until the review is complete, he said evenly, all expansion capital remains frozen. The manager felt the weight of the room settle fully onto her shoulders. Outside, the jet began to taxi. Inside the cabin, Marcus fastened his seat belt. He didn't look angry. He looked resolved. As the aircraft turned toward the runway, the terminal behind it stood unchanged in structure, but permanently altered in power. The jet lifted off smoothly, wheels folding into the undercarriage as the runway fell away beneath it. Inside the cabin, there was no applause. No celebration. Only quiet. Marcus watched the city shrink below the wing, steel and glass dissolving into geometry. Airports always looked orderly from above. Structured. Controlled. On the ground, control was more fragile. Daniel's tablet vibrated repeatedly. It's spreading, he said, scanning headlines as they updated in real time. Internal footage just leaked to aviation press. Marcus didn't ask what the clip showed. He already knew. A finger pointed. A command barked. A calm refusal to shrink. Across the city, financial desks began flagging movement. Grant Aviation Holdings, expansion suspended. Terminal leadership under review. Stock analysts didn't need context. They needed signals. And the signal was clear. Back at the airport, conference room B felt smaller by the minute. The CFO's phone buzzed non-stop. We're getting inquiries from 2 regional competitors, he said tightly. They're offering expedited infrastructure packages. The liaison turned toward the manager again. This is no longer internal, he said. You escalated a perception issue into a capital risk event. She sat straighter, but the authority she once carried had thinned into defense. I enforced access policy, she insisted. No, the legal advisor replied quietly. You enforced assumption. The word settled like final judgment. In the VIP lounge below, staff members avoided eye contact with one another. The gate agent who had tried to speak up earlier now stood silently behind the desk, replaying the moment in his mind. Outside, airport PR teams were drafting statements. Inside the jet, Marcus finally leaned back in his seat. Have we received a formal request for reconsideration? He asked. Daniel nodded. 3 calls already. One apology draft. Marcus's gaze remained steady. Schedule a follow-up, he said. But not today. Outside the oval window, the clouds opened into clear blue sky. On the ground, expansion plans stalled. Board members recalculated exposure. Leadership reviewed its own reflection. And somewhere inside that terminal, one lesson was settling deeper than any contract clause ever could. Access isn't about appearance. It's about authority. The jet leveled above the clouds, sunlight flooding the cabin in quiet gold. Below, the airport was just a grid now, runways crossing like clean pencil lines, terminals reduced to rectangles of glass and steel. From that height, it looked orderly. It wasn't. Inside Conference Room B, the vote was unanimous. Effective immediately, the liaison announced, terminal operations leadership will be placed under temporary administrative review. Temporary. Corporate language for irreversible. The manager sat motionless as security, this time discreet, internal, waited by the door. No raised voices. No humiliation. Just consequence. In the VIP lounge, the staff had already shifted tone. Conversations were lower. Movements more careful. The gate agent who had spoken up earlier was quietly approached by human resources. "Thank you for attempting verification," they told him. Sometimes integrity shows up in hesitation. Back in the sky, Daniel reviewed the incoming statements. "They're offering a public apology," he said. "Formal, on record." Marcus stared ahead, thoughtful. "Make it private," he replied. This wasn't about optics. He wasn't interested in viral vindication. He was interested in structural change. "Draft new operational guidelines," he added. "Implicit bias review. Mandatory executive verification before removal orders. Tie funding release to compliance." Daniel nodded immediately. "Understood." Marcus turned slightly toward the window again. He remembered being 19, sitting in an airport lobby with a one-way ticket and no guarantee. Back then, no one questioned whether he belonged because no one imagined he would own anything worth questioning. Now they did. And that was the point. On the ground, expansion funding remained frozen pending leadership restructuring. Competing airports began making quiet calls. Investors recalibrated their projections. Infrastructure doesn't collapse loudly. It shifts quietly when confidence moves. Inside the cabin, the seat belt sign chimed off. Marcus unfastened his belt and stood, steady as ever. "They saw a man in a travel shirt," Daniel said softly. Marcus adjusted his cuffs. "They saw what they were prepared to see," he replied. He paused, just long enough to let the lesson settle. "Next time," he added, "they'll verify first." Outside, the aircraft cut through open sky clean, unchallenged. Below, a terminal that once felt untouchable had just learned something permanent. Authority doesn't announce itself. It waits. And then it moves.